they don't attack, but cats.
Okay, well, we are live and we're looking
Yay.
for cat attacks perhaps to add some variety to the show. Welcome to the show, Luis. I am not going to attempt your last name because I will butcher it. But can you tell us what it is just for the record?
That that's fine. You can butcher it as much as I want. I like to say, everyone knows the man with no name. Well, I am the man with the unpronounceable name at your service, Luis Falcão Magalhaes.
Nice. And you said that the English version is Magellan?
Yeah, Magellan. That works.
Okay, nice.
That is actually one of the lessons. Now 12 books in. I realized that I should just have anglicized my name and written under that pen name, and that would make everyone's life much easier. But 12 books in, it's a bother to change it now.
12 books in. When did you publish your first book?
So my first published book was traditionally published, but it was in Portugal and in Portuguese. That was 2014. And but in English, it was independently published, and it was 2019.
2019 in English. Okay. And you said you have 12 books?
Yeah, I mean, 9 full-length novels. One is quite short, though, right? It's a short novel, right? Depending on if you ask thriller people, it's a novel. If you ask fantasy people, it's not a novel. So, it's because it sits right there at the end. But yeah, I'd say 9 full-length novels, 1 short story collection, and 2 novellas.
Nice. And are they all in the same world?
Yes, they are all part of Legends of Philesia.
Okay, well, EL is driving, so he will not be able to inundate us with all of the questions that he normally does, but he will try. So yes, tell us about the books behind you and show us the covers. But we prepare our people now for this, so show us a couple covers. Oh,
sure. So this is The Daughter of the Ice, which I usually recommend as the entry point in the series, right? That recommendation comes from mostly from my readers. Like many fantasy authors, I do like to flesh out the world. So I wrote a couple of prequels, but my readers are my bosses, and they all say, Luis, we like the prequels best after we've read the actual book, right? They prefer them as backstory. So who am I to say they are wrong, right? I just wrote them. They're the ones reading them, so they're the bosses. Though if you are interested in a bit lower commitment, more fast-paced thing, you do have the prequel, Blades of the Ice. Very, very short book. It's a novella. It's it's 90 pages long, and I'm very happy with it. It's very fast-paced. So this is a kind of an assassin story, right? Blades of the Ice. It's as you can guess from the cover, right? It's about a group of assassins that find out a conspiracy and head out on a mission to hunt the conspirators against the people they serve, right? The Daughter of the Ice, again, is more of a traditional quest fantasy where the titular Daughter of the Ice is a long dormant goddess that is rising again and getting up to all sorts of mischief, and an aging knight, who is next to almost trying to retire, but wants to go on one last glorious adventure, gathers up a bunch of mercenaries to try and figure out what's up with her. And then, obviously there's the twists and turns that there are.
And John has to stop in and say hi.
Yeah, hi, John. John also has a great book out there. So
yeah. And EL did insist that you introduce the cat.
So the cat is harder to grab than the books, but she is Peach, and she is my first cat out of 3. The other 2 are Blackberry and Jezebel.
Okay, and Peach is the one who's walking around?
Yes. Okay. Peach is the one that always, tries her best to get on my lap while I'm on a call. So yeah.
And I think you might be getting a message in the future from Mr. McKay. But yeah, welcome to the show. It's completely unstructured, and Ro is not here to run it like normal, so it's going to be a
Yeah.
disaster. But hey, we'll
Yeah.
muddle through.
Oh,
So
he did ask me to say, so I'm not going to show all of those books there, right? But I should, you know, mention that the series, this, I of all my books, right? There are two series already complete. One is a trilogy, the other is a quintet, right? And the quintet finishes with a book with the dragon on the cover, which I know sells, so I should show it. So that's it.
there
Just
you
wanted
go.
to do that.
Always, yes. So I'm jealous you have not one but two finished series. One day I'll have a finished series, but that's okay. Um,
Yeah, well, it's overrated. It's better to have. You know what I want to have? I want to have a 10-book finished series. Those guys are raking in the cash.
there you go. So we have a question that we typically ask our guests, and I contend that most people get it wrong because Ro and I disagree.
Yeah.
So I'll ask you early on in the show. So imagine yourself, you're going down the main street of your city.
Yes.
You're in a saddle. Now you can be
In a what?
riding, you're in a saddle,
Ah,
and you can be riding either a griffin or a T-Rex. Which one do you choose and why?
well, uh, I would have to go with the Griffin. I'm
Another
sorry.
griffin person.
I am sorry, though. I was very into World of Warcraft enough to have characters of all factions and species. So I definitely have a couple of dinosaur mounts stashed away, right, in some server. But yeah, it kind of has to go. I do have to fly the Stormwind colors and go with the Griffin.
Okay, well, you've made multiple people in the chat happy.
Yeah.
But they're all wrong.
Yeah. Well,
So-
I remember my first Griffin mount. Actually, that was a very important step in my. That was a very important achievement in my life, which just shows how much of a sad nerd I am.
And Tim is worried about your books behind you. The cat there is.
It is it is very unlikely that it is more likely that the cat will knock the camera down than the books. The cats respect books. The cats do not respect tripods.
Okay. Let's see. So you said you first published in Portuguese in 2014. Is
Yeah.
that the same series or is that a different series?
It is. It is. It was actually the book that was going to become the Daughter of the Ice. Right. It was pretty successful for Portugal because Portugal is a tiny, tiny market, and when a pretty successful book, right, I saw how much money that made. I was like, yeah, I better keep my day job. So eventually, and then I realized that what, this was stupid to begin with, right? I've been for my whole life, right? I learned English very early on, about 4 or 5 years old. For my whole life, I've been reading fantasy in English. Why did I publish the fantasy book in Portuguese? I can write in English just as well. So then, I started writing English.
And that book came out in 2019 in English then?
No, that was another detour, right? Because I didn't really, I wanted to test the waters with something different, right? So I decided to write another book. It was actually a NaNoWriMo, baby, right? I had a friend who challenged me to do NaNoWriMo. And I'm like, okay, it's, I can't, Daughter is too big of a book, right, to do in 1 month. So what can I do? Let me come up with a nice, pulpy adventure set in the same universe. And that's how A Silvery Moon was born. And I actually have sold all my author copies of A Silvery Moon, so I do not have it here to show. Well, I do have it there, but it's old. It's one of the old covers, so it really bears no resemblance to the book that's on the shelves right now.
Okay, so NaNoWriMo. So are you a fan of that, or was that a only thing?
I mean, it got me to write 2 books, so I can say that the mission was a success. But yeah, I'm not particularly. I mean, I, I mean, a fan is perhaps too strong a word, right? But it did help me. It was helpful, right? I recommend, before, I don't know, I've heard there was some controversy. I'm not really up to speed with the current news, but I usually recommended people, to try that if they say they wanted to write a book. Work for me.
So you can write 50,000 words in a month?
Oh yeah, I'm a very fast writer. If I could get the blessing of do this full time, I would be one of those authors like, I don't know, DK Holmberg that gets a series out every year. I have a very good word per minute. I just can't do it full time. So
Yeah.
So yeah.
And where are you calling in from?
So I'm calling in from Portugal, from a nice beachside town that is, no one will know if I say the name, but if any of the listeners are into surfing, they will probably know Nazaré, which is one of the big wave surf capitals of the world and is like 10 kilometers away.
And do you surf?
Poorly.
I never even tried, so you're way ahead of me.
Yeah. So I can surf. By this I mean that I can stand for 5 minutes on top of a board and catch, and if a wave decides to carry me for 5 meters, then I have surfed. But that really is the extent of my surfing skill.
Okay. And what is the weather like now in Portugal?
Nice, pretty sunny.
Warm?
Pretty warm, right? You wouldn't think, for the ice team, right, of most of my books, but yeah, so it is.
Nice. Let's see. So you have finished 2 series. That's 8 books. How many do you have total? Out 12, did you say?
Yes, I have 12. Right.
So what are you working on? What are you working on now?
Yeah, so I actually got a nice grant from the Portuguese government, and by night I mean, again, this is Portugal, right? And it barely pay a nice grant from the Portuguese government barely pays for one month of mortgage, but it's something. It's something. I got it to translate my first trilogy, right, into Portuguese. So I'm working on that, and that's probably going to be finished about a month from now, and it's probably relevant to 0.01% of your listeners. So after that, I will be working on the second book of my third series, Lost Elven Realms. So yeah, that's what I will be. And actually, I'm cheating because I've already started working on it, but not seriously, right? I just started some plotting and wrote some notes in that. But yeah.
So do you have to have like a full-fledged outline before you start, or do you just have to know kind of the beats that you want to hit, or what's your process?
I mean, I like having an outline just for peace of mind, but I give myself permission to detour from it. Right. That is the case. I often detour, add, twist, move things around, etc. But it just feels less stressful, to start with the roadmap.
Yeah, I'm with you. I used to try to outline in great detail, and then my characters would just take a left turn, and all that outline was for nothing. So, yeah, I very much skimp now on, and I just sort of, here's a couple signposts I want to hit, and now let's go.
No, that works great. I love doing that. Right.
Let's see. This is why
I mean, the last book of the quintet, the Dragon of the Ice, right? After I was done with book 4, right, I opened the notes folder where I keep my, it's my guiding star, right, to see so what's up for book 5? What did I plan for book 5? And the entirety, right, of the outline for book 5, the Dragon of the Ice, was dragon attacks. People need to do stuff. That's it. That's it. So I'm like, okay, I guess I have a starting point, if nothing else.
So, who is the main character in your quintet?
Oh, you're asking the tough hitting questions, right? So this is an epic fantasy series.
Yeah.
It's hard to point to main characters, right? To a single defining main character, right? In the Daughter of the Ice, there are three main points of view, which is Eregar, right? The aging knight that takes a mentor role to the mercenaries.
Hmm.
There's Hannah, uh, uh, a female assassin, secretly an assassin. Her companions do not know that she is that she is an assassin. And then there is Jonah, and Jonah is the thief, right? The lovable scoundrel, right? As I like to call it. It's I like the Han. I have I have a soft spot for the Han Solo progression, right? Where a character starts as a self-interested, scoundrel and ends, as an heroic scoundrel, but still a scoundrel nonetheless. And that is Joan. And without giving up too much away, right? Harrigar as a mission is by his knightly order gives him a mission to figure out, what's happening. That they have, monsters are appearing. In the roads, they reports of an army amassing to the east. What's up with that? Harrigar go investigate. And one of the people he hires as mercenaries is Jonah. And Jonah, uh, just because of his thieving background, blunders into possession of an artifact that the Daughter of the Ice is desperately looking for. So yeah, that is pretty much how these three characters will be interacting. But then as it's an epic fantasy story, and they meet characters, and then and some important characters die, others show up, others start getting point of views. That's epic fantasy, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to
So,
hijack.
I mean, you have typical example is Game of Thrones, where you had the main character. Everyone was sure the main character was Ned Stark,
Right.
and then something happens. Not going to spoil it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'm going to hijack your storyline for a second, and your three POVs. They're out there. They're on the road, and they come up with a new character who sees them and says, "Hey, I want to join. My name is Luis." And Luis joins this party, and he says he wants to stay there for a week. What are his chances of surviving the week and not being killed?
I'd say 50-50, right? It's like, listen, it's a rough world. These are good
Yeah.
people, right? I mean, look, my characters. The reason I don't say I write grim dark fantasy is that my characters are generally, good people, flawed, somewhat scoundrelly, but they do try, to keep their companions alive, right? Some are more self-interested than others, but they're not, they are heroics, right? I write books about heroes. It is heroic fantasy. I like to do my villains too, right? So I get some of the grimmer part from that, because I do like to have points of view, but the heroes are more or less heroics. So they care. They do care for people. They do try. The world is harsh though, so no matter how much they try, sometimes things don't go their way.
Okay. Um, so let's see. I have questions here.
I like questions.
Let's see. Where did it go? Uh, have you considered going back and trying to be traditionally published again, or are you happy to be self-pubbed, or what's the goal?
Well, this is a very boring answer, right? And I do like the art part of writing, right? I wouldn't want to do that, right? In the end, when all else is said and done, I write because I enjoy it, because it is fun, because it gives me pleasure. But I am running a business here, so the answer is it depends on how much it would pay, right? If I get a contract that allows me to write for a living, everybody wins. But
Yep.
I also know that in today's market, that is very unlikely, right? The chances of me being able to make this a full-time business are much better as an indie. and that doesn't mean that it's easy. It's very, very hard. But I just prefer my chance as an indie. But if such a contract were to appear, I would seriously consider it.
So you'd be willing to give up control of the artwork for your cover and whatnot?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't, of course, right? It's at the end of the day, it is, if the artwork for the cover is not the most important thing to me, right? And in fact, I have changed my cover. I have been ruthless in changing my covers and testing them to see what gets people to pick up the book more. And it hasn't. I think I have the original cover around here somewhere for The Daughter of the Ice, which is quite different. You want to see the difference, right? Let me show you. Let me show you. Is this no? No, I guess I don't have. Oops, sorry. but yeah. Let's pretend that didn't happen. But yeah, the original cover was a cover I loved, and it didn't sell, so I changed it. And I still like the new cover, right? I wouldn't put the cover in my book that I didn't like, but it was definitely not my first choice. But guess what? It sells twice as much.
There you go.
Yeah.
So
and I do think that trad publishing, people like to dunk on trad publishing, and I definitely have my criticisms on trad publishing, but they do put a lot of money, a lot of marketing dollars into understanding what sells. And what sells is not necessarily that makes our artist hearts flutter, right?
Yep. So, okay. So you it's all about the writing. The other stuff you could give up control, because me, I don't want to give up control. I want it to be exactly what I want. And if it sells, great. If it doesn't, it's what I want. Which is, why I'm not writing full time. So what
me neither, right? It's a hard business, right? I work a lot. I work a lot at it, and I just about managed to keep my nose. I just about managed to keep my nose above water and recoup my book production costs, right? It's a tough market.
Yeah. So what do you do for your day job?
I used to be a dentist before COVID. Then when COVID hit and just all the and every dental clinic closed, I had to look into alternatives. I had done in college, I had done a few stints as a freelance writer, so I went into that during COVID, and I actually wrote about esports, and that was very fun. And then eventually, COVID went away, but I had gotten an offer with a good mentor, right, to do online marketing. And I was like, okay, let's see where this leads. And now I basically do B2B, that is slang for business to business, online marketing. So yeah, that was a big career shift. But it's going well for me. It gives me more time to write, actually.
Does it help you with insights into marketing your book?
It does, but it's still very hard, right? Yeah. First of all, B2B marketing is a completely different game, because we're talking about products for businesses that are in the tens of thousands of dollars. So you can afford to be, a bit more experimental and have a lot more of volume with your ad spend. A book, I mean, I can advertise this book, no problem, right? But if people don't love it enough to go to book 2, then I'm on the rat. Because selling a book with advertisement in 2025, no matter how good you are at it, no matter how much marketing chops you have, the ad costs are such that it's impossible to make a profit with a single book.
Yep.
Right. Most people that I know, and that has definitely been the case, right? That I've definitely felt that once I launched Dragon of the Ice, most people start making small profit after book 5 in a series, right? Assuming the series is compelling enough for people to read through it. Now that's not always the case. There are some people who hit it out of the park with book 1, right?
Right.
It can definitely happen. But generally speaking, if you are spending money on advertisements, you'd better have at least the Five Book series.
Yep. So, how do you sell your books? Do you advertise? Do you go to Comic Cons? Is that an option in Portugal?
Yeah, no, not really. I mean, that was how I sold my Portuguese book, right? And it did sell. It did sell quite well. But yeah, but the English language books, I advertise, right? I advertise. I do social media, and I'm always learning, right? Again, I'm a marketer by trade, but it's in a completely different field.
Right.
I'm still learning a lot, right? I learn every day.
Yep. So, I do not actually advertise at all. I just do Comic Cons and Hope and Pray. Those are my three,
Yeah.
prongs of it.
Yeah, well, before I could see myself before travel got very expensive, post COVID, right? Before that, I could definitely see myself, going at least to the UK, right? I mean,
Yep.
Portugal to UK, it's like in 1 hour plane,
Wow. Okay.
plane trip. So that would be very easy. The problem is that it just became incredibly expensive after COVID.
Yep.
So yeah.
So, did you used to live in England, or do you just learned English from an early age in Portugal, and there's so many English that come there that you keep using
Yeah.
it?
Well, I mean, I've spent some time, right? Again, when traveling was cheap, I really enjoyed, spending a weekend in London. That was very achievable, right? 10 years ago, 10 years ago, a ticket to London 10 years ago was like $50. So,
Oh wow,
yeah,
man.
that was I enjoyed spending time there. I every now and then, I'd stay at some friend's house, spend a month. So yeah, I've definitely spent my fair share of time in the UK.
Okay. Let's see. Or do you have any famous landmarks in your books that people remark upon, or anything like when you create your world? Do you do, or is it just they're on a trail, they're on a road?
No, yeah. So okay, so there are there's the gold tower that is at the center of the holy empire of Lohander, who is the sun god, and so this is going to be explored a bit deeper in an eventual prequel series. But legend tells, right, that during the fight with the night dragon, the sun god Lohander cast his spear down from the heavens to try to pin the beast, and he missed, but the spear stood upon the land, and eventually the people gathering there hollowed it out and created the gold tower, because the spear was made of gold, that became the center of the empire, and now that is where the imperial family lives. So that is one. There's Borealis, that is the lair and castle of the primordial goddess, the daughter of the ice, right? That is actually being built in book one, and is a castle made, sculpted from a huge icy mountain. So those are, two off the top of my head. There's, so in Shadows of Orgarm, which is my trilogy, there is Garmund. Garmund is a mountain city, and that is the German architects, which is the people of Garmund, the German, as in gear, right? It comes from gear. So, and they have sculpted the entire mountain and hollowed it out, so that there is not, if you look at it from the distance, it just looks like a mountain of buildings, right? You can't guess that it was once a real mountain. They have just sculpted and tiled it over until there was no single inch of nature left. And then that's not even the biggest part of the city. This is like the second biggest city in Alesia, right? There's another city below that, with, basically where basically 1 million souls dwell, and they have artificial suns because it's under the earth and all of that. So yeah,
Okay.
those are some
Welcome.
landmarks. Hey there. I feel like I was the only one to bring a drink. I guess that I mistook the name of the show.
No, I finished mine.
Oh, cool.
Ro, we can't hear you. This always happens with us. Yes, see, this is what happens when you trust the scheduler for Bald&Balding.
Yeah, well,
At least somebody's excited to see you, Ro.
time zones are funky.
Yes. So, I'm going to hijack your characters again, and they are going to be dropped into a horror novel, and somebody has to die. Who is the most likely of your three POVs to be the first victim in this horror movie?
Yeah, Joan. Poor Joan is absolutely going to expire, right? in an hour, just because he is the nicest. Though he is quite lucky, right? That's his thing, right? Is that he does have the luck of the thief. That's the one of the chapter titles, right? So maybe it could be Hannah, right? It could be Hannah, right? Hannah is much more competent than Jonah, but Jonah is very lucky.
Okay. So as we wait on Ro to get.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, you're here? Okay. Welcome, Ro.
Well, I just want to explain my tardiness. You see,
Yeah.
at 20 minutes to 12, I'm driving, and Mike said, "Oh no, wait, you've got plenty of time. This isn't happening until 1." So I said, "Oh, okay, cool." So I got back to my apartment. I made myself a snack. I did some editing on my book. I said, "Oh, it's 12:30. I'll jump in. Mike and I can talk for a bit before this thing kicks off at 1." And what do I see? Well done. Outstanding. So hello, Louis. How are you? And I'm sure this has all been talked about in the last half hour. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Portugal, close to Nazaré.
Okay. I have never been to mainland Portugal, but I did live 3 years in the Azores.
Oh, nice. Me too, actually. It was a long time ago. It's lovely, lovely archipelago.
Which island?
Terceira.
Yeah, that's where I was, obviously.
There you go. It's the biggest one. It has the American air base, so very very English friendly, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I do miss a galone.
Sorry?
Said I do miss a galone.
Ah, yeah.
It's a good coffee drink. I'm not a big coffee guy, but galones are fantastic.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. Now, where were we?
So we've done the covers. We've talked a little bit about his world. He chose poorly on the Griffin T-Rex debate.
I regret nothing.
You picked the Griffin, huh?
I don't have any tattoos, but I was considering some, and at some point at the point in time, and one of them was the Stormwind insignia. So I will never choose a dinosaur over a griffin.
You and so many others.
Now I'm going to have to get a T-Rex tattoo on my shoulder.
Yeah.
Get the little dinosaur that Fred Flintstone uses to mow his lawn. Do that on your head.
Ouch.
Ooh. So yeah. Ro, do you have any questions?
Oh, I don't even know where I am. Sorry. It's very odd to come in the middle of one of these.
It is. So Luis, how do you have you gotten any really bizarre reviews for your books? And do you laugh it off, or does it make you stew for days? How do you handle crazy reviews that make next to no sense?
Yeah. It's funny because some of the weirdest reviews were actually positive reviews. I have a couple of reviews where people left, 4 stars, and I was reading it, and they didn't even know, right? They got the characters wrong, right? And I'm like, it's like I got the feeling by reading the review that they didn't read the book, and I was like, I know this isn't my mother. Why did they review the book? Why did they feel the need to review the book? Right? It was just someone, one day decided randomly, I'm going to make another's day and leave a positive review, right? Something without reading the book. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I guess I'll take it. But it was very odd. Listen, negative reviews are whatever, right? Obviously I don't like getting them, but I'm not going to let that, ruin my day. It took me a long time to get over my imposter syndrome, but after getting like 200 positive reviews, I was like, okay, maybe I don't suck, right? So yeah, I'm at peace with that, right? I know that, I've got enough good reviews that I know that there are plenty of people out there that enjoy my books, that thinks the books are good, that the books are worthwhile. So yeah, so every now and then, you have an odd review. I got a 1-star review that was something like, I'm not disrespecting the book, I just couldn't get into it, and I'm like, okay, fine. Right, don't disrespect the book. That's fine. Whatever.
So you're saying it's
I
possible.
personally just leave a 1-star. That's my philosophy. By the way, people don't have to do that, right? It's your review. You paid for it, right? You bought it. You can do whatever you want. I personally just leave one review. If it's gibberish, right? 1-star review. It's only if it's like full of typos and I can't even understand broken English, etc. Right? If the product doesn't work, right? I leave a 1-star review. If it's just plain bad, I guess I leave a 2 stars review. And if it's not good enough for me to want to continue reading, I do 3 stars. Right? That's it. That's it for me.
Yeah, I mean that's reasonable. I mean, I've actually had some 3-star reviews where people like, "Hey, I like this book, 3 stars," and I'm like, "Oh,
a 3 stars is
okay."
a positive review. 3 stars is a positive review. It's like a 6 out of 10, right? I mean, it's a good, not great.
Yeah,
I know that it's tough because we're all on Amazon, and we know for a fact, because we are like that, right? If I see a 3-star book, I think my thinking is like, well, I have 10 5-star books I want to read, so why am I going to buy this? I understand it sucks for someone selling books to have their book marked as 3 stars, but it's still more than 50%, right? It's still positive. So yeah.
So-
I can't entirely trust a book that has like 100 or whatever reviews or more, and they're all 4 and 5 stars. It's like, come on. I mean, either that's really super focused marketing, or someone's not telling the truth here, because that's unlikely.
Well, as someone who has a book that only has 4 and 5-star reviews, I got my first 3-star.
And that's what happens when you don't do your research ahead of time and show up a half hour late. I'll just sit here quietly.
Sword of the Elves, right? Got its first 3-star review last month. And I think the reason for that is that, first, it doesn't have that many reviews, right? Because it's not a finished series. It's a book that I wrote because I felt that I needed to write it, because there was a storyline that didn't fit, right? It was a storyline about characters that show up in the main in this series, in the Age of Rekindling series that starts with the Daughter of the Ice. But it didn't make sense. It was too much of a tangent to include in the Age of Rekindling series. So I wrote Sword of the Elves as the first book in Lost Elven Realms, and I hope to add to that, now. But because it's just one book, and as we've established, it is a waste of time and energy, and more crucially, funds to advertise a 1-book series, right? I kind of left it there, parked on Amazon. So only my biggest fans read it. So naturally, it only has 4 and 5-star reviews. I fully expect it to go down in in star rating once I put 2 more books in the series out and start advertising it properly.
Yeah, I always, when I look 5-star reviews, you're going to get, the author's friends and family to give you 5-star reviews. So I don't really read them. I like to read 3 stars because they'll be like, I did not like this. It was first person POV. And I'll be like, you know what? That doesn't bother me. I think they're more honest and more, well, I don't know, honest. They give more details about the book. And then you can decide, is that going to turn me off or not? I've read many 2 and star reviews, be like, you know what, this sounds perfect for me. It wasn't for them. But so, I don't know that, I think people overreact to this, like you said, Amazon with the algorithm, you want a high rated book, but 3-star review is fine. I think it gives you more information typically than a 5-star review would do.
Yeah.
I tend to agree with you on there, Mike. I think the people generally who leave reviews as opposed to just ratings in the 1, 2, 3-star category tend to add a little bit more detail, right? And they're going to say why they didn't like something, and quite often through that, what they didn't like will probably show me something I do like, right? Or maybe confirm that I wouldn't like that either. In which case, it's still helpful as a reader. But there are a lot of things I've seen, and even in like major movies, you'll see some horrible. How many times has a movie just been skewered in critical reviews, but done really, really well with the movie going public, right? You can't even count how many times that's happened.
Yeah, but that's a different conversation, right? That is like, for example, I enjoy fellow authors. Obviously, I enjoy when fellow authors read my books and rate, my books. But I definitely notice that fellow authors tend to rate my books lower, right, than non-writing readers, right? So I think the movie thing that you say, that you mentioned, also stems from the fact that the people who are movie criticals have a certain set of expectations that they filter the movies through, that the audience, the bulk of the audience, really doesn't have. That happens a lot. I know. I'm very. I'm invested in this conversation because I did used to be again while I was in college, doing my getting trained as a dental surgeon. I got some extra cash doing video game reviews, so I know that side of the business, right? The being a professional reviewer. And it's definitely the case that there is a big disconnect between the professional critics and the movie going, or in my case, the game buying public.
Yep.
But as a viewer though, or
Yeah.
a reader, which is going to move the needle more for you? What a critic says about it, or what thousands of people, hundreds of people, whatever it is, who are just readers, viewers like yourself, what they say about it?
Well, they're different things. This is actually an interesting marketing idea that Brandon Sanderson put out there, which is that you need to reach the marketing escape velocity, and this means that there's like a filter out there. It's very hard to be seen today, right? There's like a filter that you have to cross. Just like this is a reference to an engineering astronomical term, right? Where it's very easy to move in space, but it's very hard to escape the Earth's gravity. You need a lot of power to escape the Earth's gravity, and then once you're in space, it's smooth sailing, so to say. So it's the same kind, right? So critics and fellow authors, gentlemen with shows such as yours, right? It's very useful, right, to reach that escape velocity, right, to get that initial impulse, because they act as a multiplier, right? If you get your books in the right show, you can reach thousands of readers, right? And that's right, then the word of mouth multiplies, right? So if you're still trapped by the Earth's gravity, right? You can get 100 readers, 200 readers. Maybe one really enjoys your book and will tell their cousin or their friend, but it will be very hard to reach the escape velocity, right? So obviously, those people are precious, and you build a career by grabbing them one at a time, right? Once you have 1,000 true fans, you can make a living, or at least start to make a living. But critics are very useful just to multiply the message and to help you reach that escape velocity. If this makes sense, did this answer your question?
So we need some YouTube channel critics, Mike.
Yes, yes, we do.
Yeah, well, look, shows like these are very useful for that. I mean, it might not have the dimension that you would like, right? But it's a starting point, right? I mean, we have a very good example, right? We have a very good example in the indie sphere, which is Ryan Cahill, which he completely went against the norm, right? Because he was successful with one book, which simply does not happen. It does not happen to anyone. It happened to him, right? And what happened? Well, obviously, he had a good book, right? That needs to be, if you have a bad book, no amount of good luck and marketing and word of mouth will save you. But besides having a good book, he launched at the right time. He launched in a market that was not unsaturated, and the word of mouth caught on, and that made him a career, right? So people like to say sometimes that Ryan Cahill is lucky. I dislike that frame, because he was ready for the luck. He was ready for the opportunity, right? He had studied a lot. He had a good book. He knew what to do with it, right? And he was ready to capture that audience. But the reality, he managed, thanks to word of mouth, he managed to reach that escape velocity. For most people, right, it's very hard to reach that escape velocity just due to circumstance. So, we need to work building an audience, a reader at a time.
Yep. Okay. Ro, are you thinking Bald Dome?
Sure.
Okay. Luis. So we have a thing that is not very productive, but it's fun.
Well, writing is not very productive in general.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you to nominate one of your characters. And we want to learn more about this character, but we don't want spoilers. So I'm going to transport this person away to a new setting that he or she has never been to before. The rules of your world still hold sway, but they're going to end it with a potion, which does something magical, but you don't know what it does. And they get a weapon. And then they will have an adversary. And then I will say, go, and you tell us, how does this situation resolve itself? So for now, I need to know, who is the character that you want to send to the Bald Dome? And what is your favorite color?
What is my favorite color?
Yes, these are the two questions I need answered.
I have follow-up questions.
Okay.
So characters are not static, right? Especially in fantasy, right? Characters grow. In fantasy, they acquire magical artifacts. They learn stuff. They gain powers. So at what stage of their career would this character be?
So
I mean, I can nominate a god. Would you like me to nominate a god?
No, what we're going to do is I'll give you the whole setting with the one character you had mentioned. What? Ergar, Hannah, and Jonah.
Okay, so one of those three.
Let's go with one of those three. You nominate them. I'll tell you the whole scenario. Then you can pick what kind of power they have, because you're telling the story. You're finishing this story. I'm just setting it up. And then you take us through the paces, what they would do, and if they would survive or not. So I need a name and your favorite color.
I'll go with Jonah and
Jonah.
blue.
Okay. And blue. Okay, so Jonah has a blue fizzy potion. It's in an Erlenmeyer flask. It's rubber stoppered. Looks wonderful. It's very iridescent. And he has no idea what it does, but he knows that it's 100% effective, whatever it is that it does.
Okay.
So now I'm going to roll some dice.
Okay.
And Jonah has been transported to a dilapidated haunted castle shrouded in darkness.
Cool.
Okay, so now this is where you get a choice. Jonah can choose to have either a common item or a weapon. If he chooses a common item, he will face a common animal. If he chooses a weapon, he will face a fantasy creature. Which does he prefer?
Sorry, what is the first option?
The first option, he'll just get a random common item. The second option is a weapon. If you get the common item, you'll face a common animal. If you get the weapon, you will face a fantasy creature.
Okay.
Which
So
does
just
he
to
prefer?
recap, Johan is equipped with, does he retain his equipment that he has in my story?
No.
Okay.
So he has a blue fizzy potion.
He's naked with a potion.
Well, he has a tunic on.
Okay, got it.
We're family show.
That's right. Yeah. there you
Got
go.
it. Okay, fine. Let's get the common item.
The common item. Okay, so Jonah in this dilapidated castle, he has been given a cooking pot.
Okay.
The other choice would have been a quarterstaff. So, but now he is going to face. He's going to face a lion instead of 14 was a massive dragon. So I'm thinking the cooking pot and the lion is probably better than a quarterstaff and a dragon. But so here's Jonah. He's been searching for treasure, as he is wont to do. He's found this dilapidated haunted castle shrouded in darkness.
Yes.
He's gone through the portcullis, which is open. The gate is down. He goes in. He's looking for lost treasure. He turns the corner, and lo and behold, there's a lion. We don't know why the lion is there, but it is there, and its head perks up because it's laying down, and it stares right at Jonah. They lock eyes. What happens next?
Well, Johan hides in shadows.
Okay, the lion gets up and starts sniffing.
Yeah.
Got it. What's behind the lion?
This is the courtyard. So there are lots of rooms, doorways that can go into different rooms or whatever. It's a 3-story tall castle.
Okay. So Johan throws his pen away in whichever direction it will travel the furthest and sneaks around the lion into whatever opening he can find.
You're going to have to roll to sneak past a lion, I think, and you're going to need to roll pretty high, I think, like a 15, which Mike will never hit.
A 9.
Yeah.
Well, he is a thief, right? That is his whole shtick. That is mostly that is basic. Most of his. See, this roleplay is very easy because 8 out of 10 of Johan's choices are hidden shadows. That's his shtick.
Which is great if you're not, something that's going to smell you out pretty quickly.
Exactly.
So the lion looks over at the pot as it clatters against the stone wall, and then he looks back and Jonah's not there, but he gets up. He decides he's going to investigate. So, he's sniffing. There's not a great, strong wind. It's kind of, wind is kind of dead. So that's going to be unfortunate. So does Jonah just wait in the shadow and see if he's found, or does he keep moving? What does he do?
Yeah, Johan keeps moving. That's another thing about Johan. John, in the entirety of the series, he really goes out of his way to avoid hurting people and animals, right? I mean, he kills some people mostly by accident, but he really is the kind of, I would try to avoid hurting people and animals if I can. Sometimes he needs to, right? This is not a hardcore, thou shall not kill thing, but he really goes out of his way to avoid it.
Okay. And Ro, do you have the potion today, or am I doing the potion? Yeah, Ro. So don't forget he has the blue fizzy potion.
Yeah,
it's 100% effective on either the lion or on Jonah. You just don't know what it does. So,
yeah.
Okay, so the lion gets up. He's sort of, slowly meandering. He's sniffing. He's starting to go in Jonah's direction. Jonah's kind of thinking he's been found, but nothing overtly aggressive has happened yet.
Okay. Joanna opens the potion and it smells it. What does it smell like?
Blueberry.
It smells like blueberries.
Smells like blueberries. Great. I'm sure that would distract the lion. So he just smashes it on the floor and tries to find an exit.
Smashes it on the floor.
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't it the glass thing?
Yep.
Sure.
Glass
Yeah.
valve? Okay.
Okay.
You did say that the courtyard has exits, right? How long can it take to get to an exit?
So he throws it. The glass breaks.
Yeah.
And I guess he's looking for the exit then, and figures he can find treasure elsewhere.
Yeah.
Well, the lion is tired, so he kind of just says fine and lets you go
Okay, cool.
because you have no weapons left. And
Yeah. Yeah. No, but so that is a lot of the. So we have Anna, who is an assassin, right? We have Erigar, who is the knight. But I picked the character, the point of view that is actually the. In video games, we have this thing that's called the pacifist run, right? Where you try to go to the game without harming any single enemy. And that was, one of my inspirations for writing Jonah in the Daughter of the Ice was an old game that's called Thief, that you got the greatest score, right? It's called the Ghost score. If you went through the levels without the enemies knowing you were there, right? Without you attacking a single creature. And that was what I wanted to do with the Jonah point of views, right? I wanted him to figure out how to get outside of conflict without hurting anyone. And spoiler alert, he doesn't manage to do that through the whole series. He eventually needs to hurt, but he does pretty well.
okay.
I think your boy was very fortunate that that Mike was behind the wheel on this.
Sure.
I think had I been playing the lion, it would be like
Yeah, well,
toothpick between the teeth.
well,
right now.
before you arrive, I did say that if my characters were stuck in a horror novel, Johan would probably be the first to die, and that's exactly why, because he really doesn't have a lot more going for him, other than his wits, his soft feet, and his luck, right? And luck is most of it, really.
So Luis, I have a question. I don't know if it's going to apply here. Have you been to the U.S. before?
No, I haven't. I was set to go to the US for the first time in 2020, and then something happened. I wonder why I was.
Yeah. Okay then. Okay.
I was going to Austin. Here, the barbecue is good.
And Austin, yeah.
All right.
Oh, yeah. So, I'm guessing then, have you ever seen what the inside of a Walmart looks like in the U.S.?
Yeah.
So, my question I like to ask people is: you're going to Walmart with one of your characters. You go in the front door, this cavernous building that has everything under the sun for sale. You turn to get your buggy, your cart, whatever you want to call it, and when you turn back around, your companion is gone. So first, who is your companion? And second, where have they gone in this store that sells virtually everything? And what are they doing? Are they causing trouble, or are they going straight to the guns? What are they doing?
Yeah. So this time I am going to choose Hannah,
Okay.
and it is, Anna will be very easy to find, although she's not bad at hiding in shadows either. But remind me, does Walmart have good books?
Sure. Usually they're at the free ones, the ones like Dracula or something that they can sell for $1. But yeah, they have lots of books.
That would, so I would look there first, and then if she wasn't in the book section, I would go to the knife section.
Okay.
Right.
So an assassin who likes to read.
Yes, she
The
likes to
literary
read.
assassin.
That's actually the reason she joins the party, right? In the Daughter of the Ice, because they need someone that knows how to read.
As an author, I think that's wonderful. I already like Hannah. She's my favorite character.
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is a fantasy world, right? Whatever I say goes, and there's often it's not historically accurate, but I do feel like if I'm writing medieval inspired fantasy, that most people shouldn't really know how to read, and in fact, my world has more as better literacy than a fantasy world should, but I also have an in-world explanation for that, right? But yeah, it is, if you have an adventuring party, right, a concern is that one among the party knows how to read, because it is a useful skill, and not everyone knows how to do so.
Yeah, if you don't see the warning dragon ahead sign, things go poorly. Okay. Luis, is there any question that we should have asked you that we did not?
Yeah, I don't know. Should you ask me what I was drinking?
Looks like a red wine. I'm guessing it's from Portugal.
Yes, it is a red wine for Portugal. It's a bit, actually, my beverage of choice is coffee, but it's a bit too late for coffee, yet still too early for whiskey. So wine is the compromise.
There you go.
If that's going to be,
I realize that a fantasy writer should drink beer or mead, right? But I guess I bucked the trend.
Okay, well, there's another fan, at least, of Portuguese wine.
Nice.
Let's see. Too early for
I agree, Tim.
Well, Tim, I used to have whiskey at breakfast, but then I got married, and there were complaints.
Whiskey at breakfast might be a bit much.
Yeah, well.
Whiskey at breakfast or whiskey for breakfast?
So, Luis, the question was whiskey at breakfast or whiskey for breakfast?
Why not both?
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Well, we've been chatting for a little over an hour, except for Ro, because he trusted the scheduler.
He got bad information.
Didn't feel like that. It felt a lot less.
Oh, well, thank you. Better than sound.
I like the impromptu Dungeons and Dragons, sequence. If I knew that was what's going on, I would have chosen the night, and we could have a bit more actioning, right? Right? If I had a better idea. Huh?
Well,
when you have your next book, we can do it again.
Yeah.
There you go. So, Luis, have a good evening for you. I have to go do yard work, so I will have considerably less fun than you, I think. But thanks for coming on the show today. And now is the time where we all wave awkwardly, and I hit end. So
we'll see y'all Wednesday at 9 p.m.